Well, hi everybody. My name's Dave Burke, and this is Stewart Blythe. Excuse me. And I'm here in this gorgeous place. This isn't my back garden. This is Shepherd's Dean Retreat House in Northumberland, near Riding Mill, Hexhamshire. And uh, we're part of a group called Keeping It Together, which is basically about keeping mental health and Christian ministry together, helping people in Christian ministry to enjoy and thrive in the work that they do and with their mental health. And we do all kinds of things. We do podcasts, live sessions online, and we also do retreat days here at Shepherd's Dean, which are free for people in Christian ministry. So I'm joined today by Stewart Blythe, who's pastor of Old House Christian Fellowship. Is that right, Stewart?
They call it Old House Community Church.
Old House Community Church in Glasgow. And Stewart, could you just introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this. I'm Stewart Blythe. I am, as has been said, pastor of Old House Community Church. I've only been the pastor of the church for slightly over a year. Prior to that, for 20 years, I've been involved in theological education and higher education. I've been involved primarily within a Baptist church context, but that context has involved Glasgow, or I really should say Paisley, or the people from Paisley will be annoyed. So let me say Scotland, Paisley. Then for a few years in Amsterdam, and more latterly, I've been involved in theological education in Canada. So I've been involved in theological education for about 20 years. I came back recently, itself a bit of a story, but felt that I should finish my ministry where it began, which was not in academia, but really it was as a pastor of a local church. And therefore, I've come back to pastor a church. I am married, I have two grown up children, and I have a rescue dog called Sitka, which is the name of a Canadian spruce tree, apparently.
Yeah.
And she is a Canadian dog, and we brought her back with us when we come back. That's a
Fantastic.
little bit about me. Yeah.
Sitka spruce.
Yeah.
Lovely
Oh, well
wood.
done. Many
Very
people
fine
don't know.
grained, beautiful wood.
Yeah,
Um,
because when we say here, people ask us the dog's name, and we say Sitka, they look at us as if, what on earth? But yeah, it came from Northern Ontario, apparently.
yeah. It's a delight to welcome you. And
Thank
just to
you.
say why I was really keen to have this conversation is my wife visited your church recently on her travels, and she was really blessed by a sermon that you did on Psalm 40. And she came home and we talked about it. And I thought, no, we got to talk about this in the context of the fact that the Bible is, when we let it, tremendously helpful for our mental well-being.
Yeah.
So Stuart, tell us a little bit about Psalm 40. What's it about? Give us the story. Give us a brief exposition.
Happy to do that. Psalm 40 is, in my reading, because what you're getting here, of course, is my interpretation. Psalm 40 is a psalm of desperate longing. The psalmist is the psalmist desires God to act and deliver them from the situation they are facing. Using the language of the psalm, the psalmist is asking God, as it were, to take them out of the miry clay and set their feet once more on a rock. There is movement in the psalm because the psalmist knows that God has done this for them in the past. And when God has done this in the past, they have been able to recommit their lives to God and to tell others, this is what God has done for me. And they talk about that deliverance early on in the psalm. However, they find themselves in a situation where they are in the miry clay again. And the psalm really ends with the psalmist asking God to help them. It's a psalm of lament in many ways. It's a psalm of calling out to God in a desperate situation, asking God for help. Yes, they know that God has acted in the past, but where this psalm is they're needing God to act in the present. So that's a brief overview. There is movement in the psalm from what God has done to who they are, but finding themselves now in a situation again, using that image of clay and mud and stuck. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I'd just read the first 8 verses or so because it gives the sense of what the psalm is about. Um, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the mire, and set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. Blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust, who does not look to the proud, to those who turn aside to false gods. Many, O Lord my God, are the wonders you have done, the things you've planned for us. No one can recount to you. Were I to speak and tell of them, there would be too many to declare. Now it goes on and it gets a little bit more convoluted. But that little passage has been a kind of lodestone for me for 45 years, since I became a Christian a long time ago. Um, Tell us a little bit more about how you get into a psalm like that. You've obviously thought about it a lot.
Yeah.
Give us some advice as to how to get into a psalm so that we can teach it or share it in a home group.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some basic things we need to think about. We need to think about what is the style or the genre of the psalm.
Hmm.
This psalm, I preached this sermon as part of a series we were doing in the psalms.
Yeah.
In doing that series, I had selected the psalms, but I selected them because I wanted them to represent the kind of scope of the different genres or styles of psalm. And of course, which some people don't realize is that the biggest single type of psalm is a psalm of lament. And I think when you're approaching a psalm, the first thing is to approach it going, okay, what kind of psalm is this? Because that gives us a frame of understanding. And this is a psalm of lament. And the interesting thing, as you highlighted, is if we only read those first 8 verses, they're very reassuring.
Mm.
And this is undoubtedly a desirable place. But this is not where that psalm ends. Instead, the psalm ends with the writer saying, help. Basically, I am poor and needy.
Yeah.
That's where it ends. So I would say the second thing is to look at the movement of the psalm and to understand what is happening at this particular point and what and where then does it go. And I think there are a couple of the key things to know the genre. And this was a psalm of lament. And I unashamedly was very keen to make sure that we had several psalms of lament in the ones we looked at. We
Mm.
did also do Psalm 150, which of course is trumpets and cymbals,
Yes.
but this one is one of the Psalms of lament. I also chose Psalm 40 because U2 have the song 40 that plays in this, and I used to be a big U2 pop group, U2 rock group pop
Yeah. Yeah.
U2, and that was a psalm that song by them was one I had always liked. But the main reason for doing it was a psalm of lament. And I think when we come to preach it, we have to take the movement as a psalm of as a whole, even although we might not preach it all, in order to understand its kind of mood and style. And I think that's really important rather than pull a verse out. Because again, it's about recognizing this poetry and enjoying the poetry, looking at it and enjoying the way the language is used. So recognizing the genre, looking at the movement and paying attention to the poetry, to the metaphors, I
Yeah.
think are all really helpful.
That's terrific. Interestingly, some years ago, an English publishing house published an edition of the Psalms in the authorized version with a foreword by Bono. Um, it's only about 4 or 5 pages long, but it's a fascinating read.
It
Uh,
is, yeah. I've
yeah.
seen that. I bought that little book because I
Yes.
think they divided it up into they had that little book in the Psalms, and I remember buying that simply for the introduction, to be honest.
Yes, and that whole series, actually, the introductions, some of them are really, really good. I'll put the
Yes.
details for that in the chat so that people uh, chase this up themselves if they want to.
Yeah, and I did pick up on the fact that many people will know is that Bono and Eugene Peterson had a conversation around the Psalms,
Ah,
and
really?
which was quite fascinating, and people will be able to get that available online. And it's actually it's a great interview because Peterson says that when and Bono had referenced Peterson's writing, particularly in the Psalms. And in this interview, Peterson says that when the students said that Bono had referred to him in Rolling Stones magazine, he admitted that he didn't have a clue
Mhm.
who Bono was. Later on, they have a conversation together,
Yeah.
and there's a section in it headed Honesty and Dishonesty. And that is a fascinating conversation between the two of them around the Psalms.
We'll chase that up and put the
Yeah.
link in this as well so that
Yeah.
people can have a look at that.
It's well worth the 20 minutes watch. It's interesting and it's very insightful.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. I'll certainly have a look at that myself. Lament. We don't do lament, do we? We do praise, we do celebration, we do triumph,
Yeah.
but lament is something we don't do. What's that about?
Yeah, well, I think there's a number of reasons. I think one reason is that lament can contain genuine complaint. And people, I think, feel theologically that we are not able to complain to God
Mhm.
about our lot in life, to say, this is terrible. It feels terrible. I don't know what you are. I don't know what's happening in my life, and I don't know where you are. So I think people have a theological reluctance to that. However, the Lament Psalms make it very clear that the psalmist wasn't reticent in that sense and
Mm,
was quite prepared to lament and to complain and to speak to God and to say, this is how I am feeling about things.
yes.
So I think there's this theological reticence. I think we also don't have the resources in the same way. Some of the, and in my more cynical moments, I would say that when it comes to worship music, lament doesn't sell. And therefore, the songs that we tend to use or buy are songs that tend to emphasize praise. And I know that during the pandemic that there was some comment around the fact that we really lacked the liturgical resources to
Mm,
allow people to say we are finding things really,
yes.
really tough. So we've got that kind of theological reticence that people might have about coming and saying, well, to quote Jesus and to quote an earlier psalm, my God, why have you forsaken me? That
Mm,
people have a theological reticence to doing that. And we also then lack resources, particularly for corporate worship. And
mm,
I think both of these things make it mean that it doesn't often happen within a church context.
yes. Yes. And yet, there's something really contemporary, I think, about this. The 24/7 prayer folks that I know often say to me about prayer, keep it raw, keep it real, keep it
Yeah,
going. And I struggled with the Psalms for decades when I first became a Christian, and even for years when I was in Christian ministry, because I'd read Psalms and think, oh, that's a terrible problem. I don't understand what's going on there. But when you understand that idea of keeping it raw, keeping it real, there are no more prayers more raw than some of these prayers. And when I began to look at these Psalms from the point of view of these people are telling us about their mental state,
yeah,
that's when there ceased to be a problem. And it was a bit of a revelation for me. And I find it hard to get my head out of the Psalms now.
yes,
Um,
yeah. And I would say the reason that I chose to do a series on the Psalms, and I gave it the overall title Songs from the Heart.
mhm,
For some of them, I matched it to contemporary, whatever we mean by that, music of various sorts. So Psalm 40 was matched to the idea of U2 song 40, and there was this matching. But I was interested to allow people to explore not merely their thinking, but their feeling.
Hmm.
And I know that word needs its own interpretation because I think often we major on knowledge and what people think. We don't deal enough with emotion. And again, I think there's a reticence in the church to deal with emotion, to acknowledge its validity as being part of who we are as people. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, I was really keen that we would, to quote somebody who I can't remember, deal with the feeling thing.
Yes.
And also to say we can't divorce ourselves from our feelings. Our feelings are part of who we are,
Yeah.
and we need to bring them with a sense of reality. And feel free to say, I am not feeling good about this.
Hmm.
I'm feeling angry about this. I'm feeling grief about this, and that we need to be allowed to do that and to see that to do that in the context of worship is an act of faith. It is worship. It's not even a thing we do to get to worship or to get to faith. It's part of us expressing our faith.
Yes.
And that was why we went for the Psalms as songs from the heart.
Yeah.
And Psalm 40, as I said, was one of the lament psalms in there.
Yes. It's interesting that because the word you've used, songs from the heart, these are songs.
Yeah,
And some very surprising psalms are headed uh, with this instruction. This says, for the director of music of David. Now, don't imagine David had a private message for the director of music. He meant them to sing this, or at
yeah,
least to hear it sung.
yes,
And some of the psalms that are given musical directions are a bit scary.
yeah,
Like Psalm 6, even tells you what tune to use.
yes,
Well,
yeah,
we've long forgotten the tune, the words are still there.
yeah. And I think that was the way in which we often use songs or resonate with songs because of their content, but also the emotion, and sometimes the context in which they're sung.
Mm,
All becomes part and parcel. And I would say for the congregation here, they kind of they gave a sigh of relief when we were able to say, do you know it's okay to come in here and to say the reality of my life is it's hard at the moment.
yeah.
But here I am
Mm,
in the context of worship, the people of God and worship,
mm,
and we can say this together.
yeah. Yeah.
I One of the tricky things, and I'd be interested to know what you think about this, after one of the Psalms of Lament, I offered a little bit of resolution to it. I wanted to finish in hope. And
Mm,
one of the congregation said, is there never a day when we can simply finish in lament? And I found that a really interesting comment. I still don't know what I think about that.
yeah.
Some of the Psalms resolve, they go back to faith, but some of them don't.
Yeah.
And I guess I was just nervous from the pastoral context of ending the service in the I am, well, I am poor and needy. You are
Yes.
my help and deliverer. You are my God. Do not delay. I was nervous about leaving it there. Uh,
I think pastors like to finish on an up note, don't we? We,
yeah,
we like
yeah.
to finish on positivity.
Yes, well, and it was a very interesting comment from somebody in the
Yeah.
congregation who's very thoughtful and appreciated that we went to lament,
Yeah.
but observed that I felt the need in the end almost to
Yeah.
fix it.
The psalm that jumps out at me as you've been speaking is Psalm 88,
Yeah,
which is incredibly dark, and it finishes with the sentence, "Darkness is my only friend."
yeah.
And again, when I was younger and reading this, you're thinking, well, you could have said Jesus is my only friend. That would have been so much help. But he didn't say that.
Yeah,
And I wonder sometimes whether a Jewish background, a synagogue background, might have been echoing around in the head of a young man who wrote the words, "Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Sure,
I've
yeah.
come to talk to you again." And yeah, I
Yeah,
really.
I wish I'd preached that one there. I don't think it got on my list.
Well, you can have that for free, Stuart. But
Yeah,
it's,
well, thank you. I will take it. I will take it.
yeah. A friend of mine, a psychiatrist actually, Hilary Johnson, who's helped me a lot over many years with understanding mental well-being and ill health. She talks about how when people are depressed or very anxious, it's like being at the bottom of a well. And I think she got that really from Psalm 40. I'm at the bottom of this pit. I can't climb out. And she says, imagine that there's a ladder up the well, but the water level, you're treading water in water that's too low to reach the bottom rung of the ladder. And then she talks about the things that will raise the level of the water. And there's loads and loads of things that will do that. It might be lots of perfectly doable things, self-help things, get out, walk the dog, look after your houseplants, or it might be something more medical, like medication,
Sure.
therapy of some sort. I think that's a really helpful picture and kind of relates to this. So I thought I'd just kind of come to a nearer close by just asking you, Stuart, when you're at the bottom of the well and you need something to lift the water level, what sort of things help you?
I was going to say, I think I've used all of these ones you've suggested at one point or another. Not quite, but many of them.
Mhm.
I, I would think there are some of these things. I like to walk. I find walking very
Mm. Yeah.
therapeutic, and walking my dog is just a thing I enjoy doing. So I would say for me, getting out and walking is one of my really happy places.
Uh-huh.
I do it and I kind of force myself to do it at times because I know it's good for me. I just find that very helpful. And in terms of recreation,
Uh-huh.
I do have activity that's very separate from the life of the church. So I have a thing I do. I play in a pipe band. So I just go couple of nights a week, sometimes only one night a week, and I'm with a group of people, nothing to do with church. They know what I do. We talk about that sometimes, but
Mm.
I go there and it's just I'm doing something very different with a very different group of people, and I enjoy learning the music. So that for me, there's some nights you're like that, and my wife Suzanne also has learned to play in recent years, more like that.
Yeah.
Can we be bothered going tonight? But we do because we know that can we be bothered
Yeah.
is a situation where we need to address that, and the way we address it is we go, and then we're with, you forget. So I find that that's my other thing that I do, and
Mm.
it's very, very good for me. I think in terms of spiritually, I think feeling the freedom to express psalm-like prayers is very helpful for me. And I would say uh, a common prayer of mine has been, "Oh God, help me make it through this day."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that helps, actually. It really does help. And it's the freedom to be able to say it. You spoke about raw as that.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
find that very helpful. And there are some again spiritually, there are some kinds of music that I find helpful, which for me tends not to be so much contemporary worship music, although that is the style of the congregation. For me, I would be much more tasy, meditative, quiet. I find that kind of song that I can remember and I can repeat and
Mm.
I can sing very, very helpful. So these are some of the things that would raise the water for me.
Yeah.
There have been times in my life where I have found it very helpful to have talking therapy with someone. If there was maybe a specific thing I realized become the problem, I've also found that immensely helpful. And that the congregation were laughing at me the other day when I was telling them that my personality is that I'm more likely to see the downside than the upside of life. And I was once
Okay.
told I had to keep a happy drawer in which I had to put things that were affirming that I
Yes.
would simply dismiss as duty. I've done that, well
Mm.
done. don't thank me, it's my job. And how I had to have that unpacked a little bit and say, no, it's okay to receive affirmation as
Yeah,
well as criticism. So all of that, I would say, I have found helpful over the years.
brilliant. Stuart, thank you for this. It's been really encouraging, and I hope other people found that too. I'm sure they will. And we're grateful for you giving us some time and a lot of
Oh,
your wisdom. Thank you.
thank you. Much appreciated.